Hello, my name is Kate Lateral, and welcome to Chaos Child. This is another game in my not played yet list. We'll go ahead and see what this is about. I don't remember what this game, like why it's in my system, in my Steam account. I have no idea. It could have been something that I bought on purpose. It could have been something that I got in a Humble Bundle. But I haven't played it yet, and it's been in my account for years. November 6th, 2009 AD, 10:28 p.m. It came without warning. Didn't seem good. It was a magnitude 7.8 earthquake with an epicenter directly under the city. This disaster reduced one of Tokyo's busiest downtown areas to nothing in a single night. The high-rise buildings that had birthed so many trends and fads collapsed, as if giving up on their role in society. Black fires spread throughout the city. As individuals fell into the grip of the crowd's psychology, their terror was magnified. Combined, all of these things took many lives. The final death toll was 3,851. The final number of injured, 30,927. This event would later be known as the Shibuya earthquake. Even in all that destruction, people still suffered the most in their hearts. Some who had lost their families came together to share new resolve, while others who'd been forced to watch their friends die were driven by guilt to take their own lives. As a baby was miraculously reunited with his parents after 72 hours, a child in an evacuation center asked her dad, When's mommy coming home? He had no answer. Some of the wounded made it to hospitals by looking at real-time updates on the web. Others saw people on the internet talking about the disaster as if it were a movie and were driven mad. A homeless man was saved from malnutrition by an organized volunteer group, but at the same time a middle school boy punched a self-centered volunteer who'd come to Shibuya to find himself in the face. It was the first time in that boy's life he'd ever been violent. The psychological toll was incredible, and many of the survivors would later manifest symptoms similar to those associated with PTSD. The young were hit the hardest, and before long, the cause of those symptoms was given a name: Chaos Child Syndrome. Rebuilding happened at a feverish pitch never seen before. It felt inappropriate to say, hang in there, but people felt that someday somebody had to do something. The new slogan was Shibuya, The new slogan was Shibuya, a city reborn, and no amount of money or manpower was spared in aiding the endeavor. I don't know what happened there for a second. The whole town was in the grip of a fever. In private, a leader of the redevelopment effort said, This may sound unkind, but this frenzy feels like a town burying its grief by holding a festival. Building codes were rigorously evaluated with an eye toward earthquake engineering. Perhaps in an effort to emphasize the city's safety, security cameras were put up all over town. Shibuya would become a place where everyone could live in peace. But at the same time, a rumor began to spread about the earthquake. Something about this earthquake doesn't make sense. There were no aftershocks, and the damage had spread in a strange way. Harajuku and Ibisu, areas only a kilometer away from Shibuya, suffered few casualties and even fewer collapsed buildings. This damage pattern had never been observed in any prior earthquake, and so more than a few pundits claimed that Shibuya earthquake must have been artificial. More than anything, some of the survivors all said the same things. I saw a white light. I heard a sound like a ringing in my ears. Too many people experienced this for anyone to laugh it off, but no cause of those phenomena were ever found. It was just more evidence to those who believed that something about the earthquake had been wrong. Then, 6 years after the strange earthquake in 2015, something else was about to attract attention in the reborn city of Shibuya. If you're a god and the delusion becomes reality, about what kind of the noids you get, I don't know what the rest said. Trying to read it. It was very fast. September 7th, 2015, Sunday night.
はい。ではいつも通り3分くらい募集をかけるんで適当によろです。
Okay, I'm going to take 3 minutes for questions. Get to it. The second he spoke, the comment box started to fill. Yuma Utani watched it for a few seconds and then saw the requests. When does Haru tell us she's dating somebody? He smiled to himself. Just what he wanted. Most of the requests were about hot actors or cute idols. His audience was so stupid that it was easy to tell exactly what they were going to ask. The problem was always whether the name that came up was someone he knew. That was a question of luck and of how popular they were. But Haru, her full name was Haruko something or other, she was fine. Just a few days ago, he'd forced himself to go to an event he'd rather have skipped and seen it for himself.
Yes.
Okay. Satisfied, Uotani got up to get some snacks like he always did. He lived in a one-bedroom condo located 8 minutes from Shibuya Station. Cost 150,000 yen per month. It had been built after the earthquake, so the furnishings and layout were modern. A little more room would have been nice, but compared to the 40,000 yen per month place he'd lived in last year, it was heaven.
来年にはもうちょっと便利なところに引っ越すか。
Next year, maybe I'll move somewhere more convenient. At 21 years old, Uotani felt satisfied for the first time in his life. In 4th grade, he'd gotten big into online gaming and stopped going to school. Eventually, he'd stopped leaving his room altogether. Then he'd gotten addicted to drugs that made him sleepy but did nothing else. Once, seeing only darkness in his future, he'd planned to commit suicide. In the chaos after the earthquake 6 years ago, he'd finally managed to leave his room, but his family had already given up on him. After he failed his entrance exam, he went to live on his own in Shibuya, and he hadn't spoken to his parents since. As far as they know, he'd failed the entrance exam 3 times in a row. In fact, he hadn't even gone to the tests after the first time. There wasn't anything he wanted to learn in college, or any companies he wanted to work for badly enough. He had no goal in life at all. But things were different now.
アットちゃんにもたまには本当のことが書かれてるもんだ。チーズでいいか。
Maybe At-chan does tell the truth sometimes. Guess I'll have some cheese. He took a block of cheap cheese he bought at the supermarket out of the fridge. Usually he never ate anything this cheap. But on Nikonia live streaming, it wasn't just what you said. How you looked when you said it also mattered. Uotani wasn't a good-looking man, let alone a cute girl. He was just a plain old guy. And so to keep his program popular, he needed to make them think he was poor, barely managing to scrape by, in fact. That's why he kept the area around his PC and the parts of the apartment you can see with his webcam completely plain. Last month, he'd finally reached his goal of 4,000 viewers. For a man with nothing going for him like Utani, this was extremely unusual. 3 months ago, he'd guessed the winners of a popularity contest a certain idol group was holding, as well as their total number of votes. That must have really paid off. After that, his numbers have been going up steadily. Late last month, when his streams had appeared at the top of Nico Mia's page, he had seen a huge increase. Right now, he'd gotten above 4,500. It was quite possible he'd break 5,000 by the end of the month. It was around late last year when he'd started to wonder about his power. It was a certain rumor on one of At-chan's occult boards that made him really start to realize what he had. The name he had chosen for his stream subtly reflected this. Then I learned that I can see the future. He took out a knife to cut the cheese. There was a strange sound.
Huh?
He thought he'd just imagined it when... It sounds like knocking. Knock, 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 knock. He heard it again. It was coming from the door. How is that a strange sound? That's just somebody knocking on the door. Someone was clearly knocking on his door. Duh.
Mitsurin ka?
Huh? Jungle, maybe? Suspicious, he walked towards the door to answer, then checked the clock. It was 11:41 p.m. Not exactly normal delivery hours.
なんだよ。つか、生放送中だっつうの。
Oh, come on, I'm streaming right now. He tried to ignore it, but... The knocking continued. It was the same rhythm at the same pace. As if the visitor's goal wasn't to come inside, but simply to make that sound. Uotani felt a bit creeped out. He decided to go to the intercom camera and see who it was, but then realized that would be pointless. Only the auto-locking door on the first floor had a camera. The door to Uotani's room on the 5th floor had an intercom, but no camera. Uotani gave up.
くそ。つか、用ならインターホン押せよ。
Damn it, if you want something, push the intercom button. Knock, 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 knock.
酔っ払いか?
Maybe it's a drunk? No, the knocks were too steady for that. And there was no voice yelling at him to open the door. He'd seen this door a million times, but suddenly it looked somehow different. Someone he didn't know was on the other side of the wall, demanding entry in the middle of the night. Somehow, this made the door seem intimidating. Uotani thought he might look through the peephole to see who was outside. He was then disgusted to find himself too scared to even get close to the door. Wait, the intercom didn't have a camera, but it did have a microphone. He turned towards the living room so he could use the intercom and find out what they wanted. Uotani, it's me. Sorry to come by so suddenly. He stopped when he heard that voice. It's me. I'm very sorry to bother you at this hour. Uotani tried to remember who the speaker was, but found he couldn't. But from the tone of the voice and the words, they probably weren't a weirdo. When they said, I'm sorry, it sounded like they really meant it. Uotani sighed softly with relief, and then realized he was still carrying the knife he'd been using to cut the cheese. It suddenly felt stupid to feel so nervous. He quickly laid the knife on top of the sink.
はいはい。今開けます。どちら様ですか?
Right. I'll open it now. Who is it? It's me. Don't you remember? The voice simply repeated itself. But who are you? Uotani whispered to himself as he opened the door. Uotani narrowed his eyebrows at the person standing there. He looked them up and down, and then looked at their faces again. Their eyes met.
あんたら、どこのどなた?
Who are you guys? Uotani suddenly felt a piercing headache. Uotani closed his eyes and put his right hand up to his temple. He could feel the blood pounding in his veins through his fingers. He staggered and quickly put his other hand against the wall to keep from falling over. The pain was like the old days when he'd overdosed on antidepressants, but much more intense. He grit his teeth again against the pain and dug his nails into the wall that was holding him up, as he waited for the pain in his fingers to help dull the pain in his mind. Mr. Uotani, are you okay? He heard a voice he'd heard many times before, and felt a concerned hand on his shoulder. He somehow managed to ignore the pain and open his eyes. A worried face was peering down at him.
大丈夫。最近たまにあるんだ。
Yeah, I'm fine. This just happens sometimes lately. Overwork, perhaps. You've been so busy lately. You shouldn't push yourself too hard.
相変わらず心配性だな、お前は。大丈夫だよ。さあ、入ってくれ。
You're always such a worrier. I'm fine. Come in. So he knows this is? He opened his mouth as wide as he could and moaned, trying to ease the pain, as he led his important guest inside. As he turned his back on his guests, he told himself it had been a long time since he'd seen them. Or maybe not. It couldn't have been more than 2 months since they'd last met. It only felt long because he'd wanted to see them so badly.
そうだ。せっかく来てもらったのにすまん。生放送中なんだよ。
Oh, right. It was nice of you to come by, but I'm streaming. While he was out there, he decided he would cut some cheese for himself and his guests. Oh, don't worry about us.
いや、お前ら相手にそういうわけにもいかないだろう。
No, I can't do that to you guys. What's wrong?
いや、なんでもない。
No, it's nothing. The blade wasn't cutting into the cheese. That's strange, he told himself as he pushed down with more force. He cut into its surface, and it made an unpleasant sound he'd never heard before. No matter how hard he pushed, it wouldn't go any further. Is he cutting in his own hand? Ugh. I do feel like I should warn that the auto categorizing on stream did put this on Steam did put this in horror, so this sounds great. Confused, he yanked the knife back and forth like a saw, but it only cut in slightly deeper. It was as if there was something hard inside the cheese, like a bone. And even though he'd just taken it out of the fridge, it was slightly warm.
くそ、なんだよこれ。
Damn it, what's going on with this thing? Irritated, he slammed the handle of the knife against the cheese. But all it did was bash it in a little. He couldn't cut through it.
ふざけんなよ。
God damn it! I'll help you. His guests must have heard the sound because they rushed over. They had another knife. When did they get that out? There's a trick to cutting this thing. I can imagine it's his hand. They put the knife up against the cheese and began to move it with a practiced hand. It sounds like your work is going well. They smiled at Utani, their voices slightly low. Utani realized they were trying to keep their voices from being picked up by the streaming microphone and lowered his voice as well.
Ah.
Yeah. He grinned and nodded. His guests had introduced him to a firm that handled advertising space for popular websites, which had been giving him regular work. His reputation had quietly spread throughout the small web advertising industry, and soon he was getting more and more offers.
流行を予想することが肝なこの仕事は天職だよ。出来レースみたいなもんだ。
This job's all about predicting trends, so it's perfect for me. I can't lose. Then why do these streams?
一言では言いづらいな。強いて言えば自分がどこまでいけるか試したいみたいな感じなんだけど。
It's hard to say. I guess you could say I'm trying to see how far I can go. That's right. His power wasn't meant to be wasted on jobs that anyone could do.
誰も経験したことないから誰かに聞くってわけにいかないだろ。だから自分でやれるだけやってみたいっつうかってかっこよすぎかこれは。
No one's done this before, so I can't ask anybody about it, you know? So I want to do everything I can by myself. Or am I sounding like a show-off? No, it's wonderful, I think. And done. After he'd smacked it a few times, the cheese was a little funny looking, but the even slices were lined up neatly on the plate.
悪いな、働かせて。
Sorry to make you help like that. It's nothing. Go on. I'll wait until your stream is finished.
ああ、冷蔵庫の中適当に見繕ってくれていいから。
Thanks.
ああ、静かにな。
If you want something from the fridge, grab it. Oh, but be quiet. That doesn't seem like cheese. Utani took his cheese back to his seat. and saw a flood of comments reading, "He's late," and "Did he log off?" What should have been only 3 minutes had turned into more than 15. Utani put a bite of the cheese in his mouth and began to chew loudly.
申し訳ない。この安売りセールしていたチーズがありえないくらい硬くて。
So sorry, I bought this cheese on sale and it's just so incredibly hard. He apologized to the camera, remembering to keep up the act of being poor and starving. And as he'd hoped, the comments started to come in. I heard you have new hobbies. Nikone has always liked this, reported. The broadcast will end soon. This is making me sick. What happened? I'm very worried. Stop it, it's disgusting. Uotani's face took on a confused expression. The comments were strange. He thought there might be something on the camera, but he turned around and saw only his fake poor room.
どうしました?
Is something wrong? He spoke into the camera, but the comments still didn't make any sense, and they were coming in faster. Maybe there's a problem with the camera. He reached his right hand out toward it. In an instant, his headache was back. He cut his own hand. It was the same pain as before. No, worse. He closed his eyes and jerked forward, banging his head against the desk. The pain in his head was so bad that he didn't even feel it. He tried to hold his head in his hand, but for some reason his right hand wouldn't move. So instead he pushed his other hand up against his temple. He felt squishy. The vein was incredibly swollen. It felt like rubber. And each time he felt his blood pulse through it, there was an unpleasant sensation in his fingers. Gross. He stamped his feet against the floor, hoping to find some small escape from the pain. But it didn't even get slightly better. It was then that he realized he was crying. He could feel the tears coming from his eyes. The pain was moving there now, too. Unable to bear it, he opened his eyes. He gasped. The whole scene appeared in front of him like some kind of awful magic trick.
なんだこれ?
What's going on? He suddenly heard the sound of something wet dripping onto the floor. His eyes reflexively turned towards it. His right arm was gone at the elbow, and the stump was gushing blood. There was a pool of it on the floor, and the sound he heard as the new blood splattered on into it. Utani didn't understand what had happened to him. What was going on? He'd just gone to check on a knock at the door. The pain screamed within him. Any sense of pain in what remained of his right arm was overcome by the pain in his head. He felt nothing from his arm at all, although he saw the blood dripping to the floor. What the hell was going on? He blinked and forced his aching eyes to function as he looked around the room. It's not his fingers, it's his whole arm. On top of his desk, he found the rest of his arm. It was sitting on a plate. At first, it looked like it was in one piece, but it wasn't. It was neatly sliced into uniform pieces. Each piece was about 1 centimeter wide, and the slices moved neatly towards his fingers. They sat upon the plate in, roughly, his arm's original shape. Miraculously, he saw there was no blood on the tip of his index finger. He still didn't understand that it was really his own arm, but sheer disgust at what he saw caused him to leap out of his chair. What was this? What kind of prank was this? The contents of his stomach flooded into his mouth. He vomited. The pink fluid splashed against the desk. He saw something solid in the middle of it. It was a thumb. It was covered in bite marks, saliva, and stomach acid, but horribly, he remembered it. What? When did he put that into his mouth? In his pain-filled mind, he suddenly heard a sound he'd never heard before. Each time he heard the sound, the pain in his head got worse. He turned towards the camera, hoping for an answer to what was happening. But of course, there was none to be found. The screen was filling with comments, but his eyes were too filled with tears for him to read them. As the whole world turned red, Utani didn't even realize that his lips were turning purple. His lips had turned purple from lack of oxygen. They were stained red with blood from his severed thumb, which he had chewed himself. As he tried to fight the pain, he began to fall unconscious, and tears fell from his eyes. The tears seemed pink to him. Utani was weak in blood. He died, still facing the camera. Jesus. His guests watched the chain of events unfold, then silently headed for the door. Just before they left the room, "Goodbye," they said, as if nothing at all was wrong, and shut the door. Jesus. Did I say that already? God, what the hell? I'm bored. Go back to the usual stream. Huh, right. This is the trick. You just saw a man die live. Ugh. September 19th, 2015, Friday night. Momone Takayanagi had finished her concert. Like always, she stayed behind to help put away the instrument. She even helped clean up the audience seats, even though that was the concert hall's job. Only after all that was done could she take a break. There wasn't much time left before her solo street concert, but she still had to help anyway. She'd always been like that. Even if it wasn't her responsibility, she couldn't help but get involved. It was like in middle school when one of her friends who wasn't as good at studying asked her for test notes. Or in high school when a girl she knew asked her how to make Valentine's chocolate for a boy she really liked. She'd stayed up so many nights. Her own test grades were worse than her friends. She didn't have even anyone to give chocolate to on Valentine's Day. In the end, it was the other person's responsibility, not hers, but...
要はヘタレなんだろうな。
Basically, I'm just a huge wuss. Momone Takayanagi was, at heart, scared of not doing everything she could, even if everything wasn't her responsibility. The concert today was another big success. Sure, it was a tiny room that could only fit in 150 people or so, standing room only, but tickets were 3,000 yen, high for a band with an amateur vocalist like her, and they still sold out instantly. It was bizarre how excited the crowd was. She'd heard sobs during the ballad, and during one of the high-tempo songs, the audience had stood up all the way to the back row.
ありえない。
This is impossible. She felt the chill and hugged herself tightly. It's not that her band wasn't popular. They'd started out in the Nikonia Sangit category, and had kept going by doing covers of popular anime songs. It helped that her face, which had earned her the nickname of Scarecrow in school, could look really good when she wore makeup. And if all of them put on ridiculous costumes and acted like idiots, some people would enjoy that. Videos of their concerts and performances pulled a decent number of views online, but Takayanagi noticed. The vast majority of the people looking at the videos were people who'd come to her concerts. People who'd experienced that insane intensity were going back to the videos to try and feel it again. And Takayanagi knew that they probably wouldn't feel even 1% of it.
ありえないよ。
It's just impossible. Ticket prices and the audience sizes were one thing, but the strangest thing to her was their eyes. Their eyes pierced right through her, unblinking. They were like pets, totally dependent on their master. The meaning of the lyrics began to take over their lives, and they never even questioned it.
やっぱり私の声はおかしいんだ。
There has to be something wrong with my voice. When she first realized that this was happening, she tried to quit the band. Even if she couldn't, she at least wanted to stop doing the live shows where people heard her directly. The others around her wouldn't let that happen. Your voice is amazing, they would tell her. They forced her to keep singing even as the concerts began to terrify her. Takayanagi tried to get out of it, but in the end, she kept giving in. She owed her fellow band members for getting a plain, dull girl like her into music. For a while, part of her managed to have fun. But in the end, Takayanagi lacked the tiny bit of courage needed to break out of the cycle. She forced herself to get up and head toward the street concert, which she didn't really want to do. She'd received an email. She read it slowly.
嘘。
No way. She almost dropped her smartphone. She read it again and again, trying to control her shaking hands. It was nothing special, just a simple message about one of the songs she'd made. Good song. Keep it up. No way. Takiyanagi tried to stop the tears but couldn't. The band would get too many messages like this to count, especially after concerts. She knew it was rude, but to be honest, she was sick of them. But this email address wasn't for her band. It was one for a site where she had anonymously uploaded original songs. In other words, whoever sent this message hadn't come to her concerts. They'd never heard her voice live or felt its strange power. But they had still said they liked her song.
マジですか?
Really? Wiping away tears that wouldn't stop, she quickly wrote a response. That makes me really happy. Thank you. Even after she sent it, she kept crying for a while. She hadn't cried this much since the earthquake. And then she stood up.
こんなもん!
Stupid things. She took her costumes for the day's concert out of her bag, balled them up, and threw them in the trash. It was a white caped outfit, worn by some angel character in some anime. Certain fans really loved it, but she didn't care about it at all. She took a wet towel off a nearby table and violently wiped away her makeup.
こけしで上等歌ってんの?
I think I'm okay with being a scarecrow. She was never wearing another cape or putting on makeup to look like an anime character again. Never, she said aloud. She realized she was more excited than she'd ever been before. And then she started to realize what she wanted to do.
いっそのこと渋谷を離れるってのもありか。どうせいろいろゴタゴタしちゃうんだろうし。
I guess I could just leave Shibuya. I'm sure things are going to get messy here. What would happen if she said she was going to quit the band? It caused trouble for a lot of people, definitely. Her band was scheduled to play in the Restoration Festival. But even so, she never wanted to sing at another concert.
いつもストリートライブをやってる道は常連さんと勝ち合っちゃまずいから避けて。大丈夫か、この顔だし。
I shouldn't use the street where I've done shows or my fans will see me. Wait, I'll be fine with this face. She laughed and kissed her smartphone.
やばい。楽しい。
Oh wow, this is so much fun. She couldn't wait to get home and start fiddling with her music. Over the web, she could really share her music with others. As long as they weren't hearing her voice live, it would be fine. If she just played a recording from a speaker, for example.
小型のスピーカーなら家にもあったな。
I've got a small speaker in my house, don't I? That's right. She'd leave Shibuya, and when she had a few more songs, she would record them and play them at street concert. That speaker was small enough so she could fit it under her clothes to fool people. It would be rude to do the same song every time, so each time she'd re-record it at home. Uh-oh. There was a knock on the door. One of the staffers, maybe?
あ、もう出ますから。
Oh, geez, I'm coming. She smiled and answered them. Now that she'd thrown away her clothes, her bag was lighter than she'd ever imagined it could be. The lightness made her think about the future. She was happy. Knock, 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 knock.
はいはい。
Coming! Takiyanagi happily danced towards the door, completely ignorant of what was on the other side. September 19th, 2015, Friday night. Shortly after she finished, she was walking through Shibuya. She had a limp and dragged one leg behind her as if it were injured. Her bangs were unnaturally long. Most of her face was covered by them. She wore a dark-colored dress that seemed to melt into the night, and above it, a bright red cardigan. Her chest, arms, and legs were almost completely covered. Despite the fact that the night was still warm, she wore gloves, as if it were a sin to show any skin at all.
あ、ごめんなさい。
Oh, sorry. She ran into a couple coming out of a hotel and staggered slightly. But she didn't even look at the people she ran into. She looked down and disappeared into the streets of Shibuya.
誰？決めな。
What was that? Man, talk about creepy.
ねえ、 今の人の顔見た？
Hey, did you see her face?
だよ。
Huh? Why?
気持ち悪い。何あれ？
It was so weird. What was that?
何？あの目。
Those eyes were so weird. Takuru Miyashiro. Let's say you asked a kid in middle school, do you know what Schrodinger's cat is? Most would say yes, or I've heard of it. Well, start by eliminating the DQNs who say they've never heard of it. Next you ask, well, what is it? Next we eliminate those poor fools who say, it's something about a cat in a box, right? Or, there's this cat, but you don't know if it's alive or dead, right? Or maybe they say, there's a cat in a box and next to it there's a device that may or may not give off poisonous gas. You don't know if the cat's alive or dead or until you open the box. Everyone knows that. We can eliminate these show-offs as well. Anyone from these groups is a wrong-sider. The right answer would be to describe the experiment and then say, it was a thought experiment proposed by Schrödinger to criticize the quantum mechanical theory that state collapse only occurs after human observation. But barely anyone can do that. And I'd imagine that I'm the only guy who's still in high school who knows that Schrödinger got the idea of exchanging letters with Einstein. He sounds like a smartass. I hate wrong-siders. I'd taken a break from investigating the 2 incidents that occurred recently in Shibuya and was paging through some at-channel blog aggregators for a change of space. As always, articles about bad idols and corporations with terrible work environments rating tons of hits. It was hard to believe that the crash of 15 was a huge news story that just happened this month was already off the front pages. People reading the comments on these sites realized that everything they read about corporations and idols was carefully controlled. Did they know that most of the big aggregator sites are corporations too? Did they realize that the comments were all manipulated to go one direction or another? Kids our age were living in a world where all the information you could ever want is right at your fingertips. To those of us in the enlightened generation, ignorance was the worst sin. The ignorant were self-righteous, easily manipulated, and eager to push their paper-thin worldview onto others. They were nothing but a nuisance. The worst of the lot were the so-called otaku. I couldn't stand otaku. They were wrong-siders. Take the picture on the cover of this magazine. It was from Bloodtoon. Any otaku who just watched it for the cute characters was a loser. There was no point in watching the show if you were going to ignore its deeper themes. I couldn't stand people who still held the old-fashioned ideas that only otaku watched anime. People who ignored the show's themes and just watched it for the cuteness were even worse. They were ignoring the implicit social criticism hidden in...
何？
What? I stared at the magazine in amazement. Specifically, I stared at the box that listed the next episode previews. The text said that Eren was missing.
バカか！
Idiots. Damn it, I'd let my guard down because I knew this episode was written by the guy who wrote the original manga.
この原作者は原作のことが分かっていない。
The original author doesn't know anything about his own work. How could you remove Eren from the story halfway through? Not keeping her around meant bringing all the internal drama that had been built up so far to a halt. God damn it. So much for my change of pace. I knew I had work to do on the case, but I'd put it away because I couldn't find any link between the two crimes. I thought for a moment, then took my magazine from its secret stash. It was an issue of an older magazine called Cool Cat Press. People called it a dating guide for normals, written by someone who'd never dated a girl in his life, but you'd be surprised.
女性が必ず落ちる告白の言葉？
Magic words to make any girl fall in love with you. Stupid. I knew it was stupid, but when I ran an internet search for the #1 phrase, nothing came back. That was the thing. The fact it didn't show up on the internet meant to me that it was worth something.
誠に勝手なのですが、好きになってもいいですか？
I know this is extraordinarily selfish of me, but may I fall in love with you?
何を？
With who?
何してんだ！
What are you doing? I turned to yell at the voice.
うん？
Huh?
尾上、お前いつ？
Onoe, when did you get here? I hid my favorite magazine behind my back and tried to calm my racing heart. Even though we've known each other since we were kids, don't just come in like that.
ノックしたよ。
I
て
did
か、
not.
何その雑誌？面白いの？
So what's that magazine? Anything interesting?
なんでもない。
It's nothing. I couldn't let her find out. This was bad.
どうしたんだよ。なんで制服着てるんだ。帰ったんじゃないのか。
What's going on? Why are you wearing your school uniform? Didn't you go home? Serica frowned.
今日の部活で事件のこと調べてこいって言ったのタコじゃん。
You're the one who told me to go investigate the crime scenes for our club today. Huh, that's right.
はいこれ追加の現場周りの画像データ。
Here you go. More pictures from the crime scenes. Serica took a USB memory stick out of her purse.
おう、ありがとう。ついでに僕の PC に入れちゃってくれるか。
Oh, thanks. Could you transfer it to my computer for me while you're at it? Serica looked a little confused.
珍しいね。自分の PC 触らせるなんて。
That's rare. You never let anyone touch your computer.
別にお前はいいよ。
Not really. You're allowed.
ふーん。
She didn't seem to think much of it as she started to copy the data off. Okay, now's my chance. The RV was cramped, but there was a lot of space for storage. I pretended to make tea as I tried to find a room on the top shelf. Okay, there's just enough room for one more magazine. And then I heard a pshoo, pshoo sound, like a small fart from behind me. I glanced back and saw that Serica was using the mouse with one hand and fiddling with her Garo Froggy Garoro strap with the other. This was my chance. The Garo Froggy Garoro strap was a soft vinyl cell phone strap I'd won at a candy contest when I was a kid. When you pushed its belly, it was supposed to go Garoro Garu. Boo-hoo. Turned out to be an incredibly rare prize that would fetch 100,000 yen at auction. Since I was a kid who didn't know any better, I gave it to Serica as a present. Serica seemed to really like it, and ever since, she'd carried it with her. Which, well, that was fine, but it was old and faded. When you pressed its belly, air leaked out of its side and made a weird noise. It used to go Garoro Garo, I think, but now it just made a strange whooshing sound. Ever since she was a kid, she'd had a habit of fiddling with it, especially when she was nervous or focused on something. In other words, she was focused on the computer. Now is my chance to hide it. I jammed the magazine onto the shelf and moved some things aside so she couldn't see it.
マウンテンビューでいいか？
Want a mountain view?
いいよ。もったいないじゃん。それにすぐに帰るし。
Nah, don't waste it.
終了。
I'm leaving in a second anyway. Okay, all done. There were quite a few files on the screen.
結構撮ったな。成果は？
You took a lot of pictures. Any luck?
新しい発見はなかったよ。タクは新しい共通点見つかった？
I didn't see anything new. What about you, Taku? Did you find anything new that connects the two cases?
いや、
No. I shook my head, frustrated.
そっか。まあ気長に行こう。じゃあ明日部室で。
Ah, I see. Well, let's not get frustrated yet. I'll see you in the club room tomorrow. Just as she was about to leave, I got an idea.
あ、尾上。
Oh, Onoe. I needed to double check my information. She was, in theory, a girl.
あのさ、例えばなんだけど。
I'm just asking, but...
うん
Huh?
ああ、なんていうか、お前が告白されたとしてさ。
Well, let's just say someone asked you out.
うん
Hmm?
いや、だから例えばこう言われたらどう？誠に勝手なのですが、好きになってもいいですかって。
Just hypothetically, okay? What would you think if they said, I know this is extraordinarily selfish of me, but may I fall in love with you?
さっき言ってたやつ
Is that what you were just saying?
それはいいから。どう？
Never mind that. What do you think? Sarika thought for a second.
年下なのその人
Is this person younger than me? I'm so confused.
え？
Huh?
丁寧語だから
Since they're being so polite. That's true, come to think of it. Why was it so polite anyway?
年下なのかな。いや、そうじゃなくて、どう？
Maybe they are. I mean, never mind that. What do you think?
どうって丁寧だなって思うけど
Well, I think it's really polite, but
告白されたことないからよくわかんない
nobody's ever asked me out, so I don't know.
他には何か思わないか？こう素敵だなと思ったりしないか？
Anything else? Like, oh, how romantic.
ん別に相手によるんじゃない
Not really. That would depend on the person, right? What are these circles? Grr. What's going on here, cool cat? Depend on the person asking the question? Of course it would.
あそうだ
Oh.
忘れてた
Oh, right. I forgot. Sarika stretched out her hand.
500円ちょうだい
Give me 500 yen.
え？
Huh?
これこれ忘れてた
Here, here. I forgot. She showed me the paper bag she was holding.
さっきそこでゲンさんに会ったのタクにいつものだって言って渡してくれって特価で500円でいいって立て替えたの
I just ran it again. He gave me this. Said it was your usual. I paid him 500 yen
い
for
つ
it.
もの？
My usual? Confused, I took the bag from her. Gen's usual changed every time I talked to him, so I couldn't count on it. What was it today? Magazines? That drunk old bastard!
何いつものって
What's your usual?
なんでもない。ほら、500円。
Nothing! Here's 500 yen! I forced 500 yen into her hands. Ignoring her persistent questions, I led her to the door.
明日学校で。
I'll see you at school tomorrow!
データはありがとう。
Thanks for the
助かった。
pictures. They're a big help.
わかったよ
Fine. Reluctantly, she left my room. Whew, damn it. Sure, this was what I always bought from Gen, but the information in the last one was no good. The heck was a cool cat anyway? A cold cat? Is it cold because it's dead? 100 ways to secretly show your sexy side.
じゃない。
No. I needed to hide this too. But I had so many of them now, I was running out of room on the top shelf. When I tried to force it in, a mountain of old papers came falling out. Damn it, no room, huh? What's this? It was an old scrapbook about the murders that had occurred 6 years ago in Shibuya. I'd bought it from Gen too, come to think of it. I'd already scanned it, but I'd forgotten to throw out the original. How could I, of all people, be so lax with information? I'd just have to bundle it up with the rest of my collection. Huh? My eyes lingered for a second on the page. Come to think of it... I quickly ran over my PC. I opened the files on the case I'd been looking for.
マジか。
Seriously? My words were a whisper. I looked back at the scrapbook, then compared it to the data on the PC. There was no doubt. I kept looking at it, it kept saying the same thing. But this, if my hypothesis was right,
きっと
I'm sure even
警察
police
も気が
haven't
ついてない
noticed.
ぞ。
Oh my gosh, there's so much here. Okay, strange sumo stickers are increasing in Shibuya. Name, Binance Milk Girl reproduction prohibited. Lately, stickers of the face of sumo wrestler hat on them have been appearing around Shibuya. You started seeing them on signs and guardrails all over Shibuya for 5 or 6 years ago. There's a lot of other stickers put up by graffiti artists, but Shibuya in particular has a large number of these sumo stickers. Some have speculated they're a message from a terrorist group, or perhaps a cult, but as of now, that's nothing more than a hypothesis. When asked about the stickers, a 41-year-old man who worked at Jinan Shibuya Hair Salon said, "They're creepy. I wish whoever it was would stop destroying the Shibuya landscape." Sometimes residents would take them down, only to see them reappear later. Shibuya City Hall says, quote, "We are continuing our community outreach efforts to stop these stickers from being put up. But also, there are no plans to use city funds to remove the stickers. Police have said that placing these stickers on public property is a misdemeanor, but that it's extremely difficult to prosecute without catching someone in the act of doing so. They have no current plans for dealing with the stickers either. The citizens of Shibuya are going to be stuck with these stickers for a while, it seems." After I saw the first one 2 years ago, I've been seeing them everywhere. Feels like there are even more lately. There's one of the escalator at Hikariro. How the hell did they get one down there? I always feel sick when I see that face. I once threw up when I saw these stickers. I feel like I have watched an anime about this. Now that I'm seeing these stickers, which I don't know if you can tell, it's like 3 different faces merged into one, like side, front, and other side. I feel like I've seen an anime that deals with this. Like it was about kids who had some kind of superpower?
この時はまだ歴史シールはごく一部で話題になっているくらいのものでしかなかった。
Yeah, at this point only a few people were talking about the sumo wrestler stickers. I cannot remember what the show was that I watched, but I feel like it had the same premise as this game. And in the show, they end up finding like an underground testing facility of some kind that had to deal with other kids who had weird powers. I don't know, it was very strange. Who could have known that these eerie stickers would mark the beginning of a world-changing event? So it turned out that there were like murders that happened at the same places that the murders were happening again at, like however many years later. I'm assuming 6. So like it was murders on these days specifically at the exact same places that 6 years later another murder was occurring on the same date in the same place 6 years later. Anyway, I can't remember what it's called. If I figure it out, I'll put it in the description. But this game seems like it's going to be pretty long. So if you're interested in playing for it yourself, it's sort of horror. It's definitely a visual novel, so you're basically just reading the entire story. It doesn't seem like there's many choices, honestly. But I do kind of want to play the game the rest of the way through. See if it is actually just the anime that I watched. As always, though, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!